Yeah, okay, that's good. Pain is actually is an uncomfortable feeling in your body and sometimes even in your soul, okay, that warns you that something is wrong. So pain is a friend. Pain is a friend. It tells you if a boundary, for example, is crossed. How do you feel if you are violated? You feel some certain level of pain, right? Right? Okay. So this is not just about our physical pain. This is also about our spiritual and emotional pain. Um, how's everybody doing today? Is anyone here in pain? You know, my wife and I were watching. Have you seen the movie "It's a Beautiful Day in Your Neighborhood"? Mr. Rogers. Okay. Uh, in his introduction, he was Tom Hanks was actually reenacting a very special, maybe one of his episodes. And the episode says, so here was Mr. Rogers introducing to young kids, what are you going to do if someone is feeling hurt? And he was saying, physically, if you get hurt, you go to the hospital. But emotionally, if your feelings get hurt, where do you go? You see, we don't know sometimes what we do with our emotional pains, okay? And I think as a church, it is important for us to understand that church could be a good place for people who are hurting. Sometimes people are quite disappointed that instead of a church offering that space, sometimes they feel like they're left out, they feel like they're abandoned, they feel like disconnected. Okay? So as a church, our goal here is to actually improve our ability to understand someone's pain. You know, when someone is in pain, we have this idea that maybe the best thing that we could do is fix someone's pain so that the pain would be gone away. But the problem is, people who are in pain are not necessarily looking for a person who would actually take their pain away. Pain is a big part of their journey, a big part of their story. And sometimes people are just looking for, if I have this thorn in my flesh and it's causing pain, am I safe enough to tell you that this is the thorn in my flesh and it's causing me pain? Can you provide that safety if I'm going to come to you? If all you do is to look at me and say, oh man, something is wrong with you, and maybe you need to be fixed, that's a very threatening place to be. By the way, we have young people here. Thank you very much for joining us. Two of these three ladies here are my kids. There is a reason when sometimes they don't come to us because they are in pain. Maybe physically, if they are in pain, they would come to us. But emotionally, as parents, we do have this tendency to not to listen, but to fix. And sometimes, you know, even young people, they are just looking for someone to actually understand them, not necessarily to fix them, right? And that's a very great temptation for us. So,
Is it working?
yeah, it's working, yes. Okay. Okay. So let's talk about pain that is something outside what we experience in our biophysical, experience. Let's talk about pain in terms of our relationships. And when we talk about relationships, I'm going to talk about the three types of relationships that maybe the reason why we're created in this world. Number one is God designed us to have relationship with others. And God has designed us to have relationship with ourselves. The summary of the second half of the Ten Commandments is love thy neighbor as thyself. Very short summary of the second half of the Ten Commandments, but it's very powerful. The equation is there. We are created actually to love others, but the basis in loving others depends on the healthiness, the health of our relationship with self. Love thy neighbor as thyself. Okay? Now, the third one here is our relationship with the world that we live in. Okay? So there's relationship with others, relationship with self, and relationship with the world that we live in. So as we are growing up, as a child, do you remember, that it's quite natural for you to look for companionship, to look for connection. Why would a child all of a sudden just looking for mama as a sense of security, looking to be loved and to love? That's something that we didn't learn. That's something is just part of the DNA that God has, placed in us. As far as relationship with ourselves, it is also important for us to actually feel valued, to be important, to feel that we have this kind of worth that we're looking for. Right? So nobody taught us this. It is just part of the DNA that God has placed in us when we were created. All of us are looking forward to, as we grow, like when we were children, as we were growing, we were always wondering from the eyes of our parents, am I worthy to be in this world? Sometimes we try to do our very best just to get that kind of appreciation from our parents, from our friends, from our family members and loved ones. Because that is the place where we try to understand who we are. Some people are actually, growing with a very distorted idea of who they are. And sometimes, because what they've been hearing growing up, you're stupid, you're dumb, you're, maybe from parents or friends growing up, the idea of self is, maybe you're right. I'm dumb, I'm stupid. So the identity, the relationship with self, the way they see who they are, is quite distorted. So if self is no longer being seen as someone who is created in God's image, if self is now being seen as someone who is defective, how can you actually love others if you can't love yourself? And then this equation will be affected. Okay? Because if you don't love yourself, sometimes you would love others more than yourself. You start being clingy, living a codependent relationship, simply because without the other, you feel so insecure. Because it's hard for you to actually see the true beauty in yourself, the beauty that God has placed in you. Especially if you are, as a child, experience quite a traumatic experience. Abuse, hurt, betrayal, abandonment. So these things could be so powerful that you tend to depend on what others can give you before you actually are able to embrace who you are. That's when this equation, love thy neighbor and thyself, is affected. It's no longer balanced. But when Jesus was actually here, the introduction, as far as the Ten Commandments is concerned, of course, the first one is love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind, with all thy strength. We know that. But as far as our relationship with one another, the equation is there. Can you really love others the way you love yourself? What if the way I love myself is looking at the mirror, man, I hate myself. You see that kind of basis? And it seems like you're very loving to others, but actually, if you go deeper, you will realize that it points to your own insecurity. Um, that's why. Um,
It's not clicking behind you every time you look down. Double check that as you go along.
okay. So let's go a little bit deeper with this three relationship. Okay, loving others, loving self, and then our relationship with this world. Okay, the first one's loving relationship with others, the kind of pain that we experience here. You don't need, by the way, just this week, I was invited to attend and be a member of the panel. The Thunderbird Academy, Adventist Academy, they were having this, what they call Mental Health Week. So I was invited to be with them, and we were talking about depression. And there were students in part of the panel, there were students who were sharing their kind of struggle, suicidal thoughts, for example, sadness and sorrow and depression. When one of the students was sharing his struggle and he was crying, he was right there at the pulpit. The beauty is that all of a sudden, a guy from the audience, a classmate, running, and then throw his arms and wrapped around, this individual who was struggling as he was telling his story of loneliness, of isolation, of abandonment, of being bullied, and thinking of, ending his life and things like that. And then another person came, and then another person, until there was a beautiful group of people hugging, providing that kind of care and love for that, specific individual. Now, as I was watching this, it is a proof that we are actually designed to connect. So when someone is saying, I'm not connected, and it's painful, it attracts people, and these people who are attracted actually could relate. These people are the ones who actually experience, yes, I can relate, I understand that pain. I also was isolated and abandoned at some point. So those people who actually run and gave this young person a hug, they are actually experiencing a pain that's quite similar to what he was experiencing. Okay? So the connection, the communion, the companionship, the sense of family and togetherness, this is part of our need. Imagine, now we have two different groups of people here. At least we have someone representing, three of them representing a younger generation. And some of you are actually getting close to sunset. My father and my mother are actually on the verge of that. That's understandable. Sunset, yeah. And in my profession, people who are actually getting really close, and in fact, there are many people who are wondering why they are still alive, and they feel like it's overdue, especially if they have outlived their spouse, their brothers and sisters and friends, and they feel so alone, isolated. Okay? It is so painful to live without connections, without communion, without family, without this togetherness. And there is the pain there. Okay? This is the pain that you will see on people's face and hearts, and especially when they ask, why God? Why can't you just take me now? And sometimes we feel like, no, don't say that. It is against the law to actually, take your life. And they're not saying, I'm going to kill myself. Their prayer is, God, take me. There's no one here with me. I outlive my family members, even my children. It is a very lonely place in this nursing home. I don't understand why I'm still alive. Okay? So that is a pain as far as connecting with others is concerned. The pain that's connecting with self, this pain is more present with the younger generation, because this is this phase where they are actually forming their own identity. And then we experience this again during our midlife crisis. Can we ask, who am I? Who really am I? When I remember when I was 33 years old, it hit me. I was caught in surprise. I said, Jesus Christ was crucified when he was 33 years old. At least he was quite sure about his purpose. Alexander the Great was 33 years old. He has conquered so many places. When I was 33 years old, I felt like I'm so useless. I had no direction. What was I? Why I was here? Okay. So the identity was so painful to understand and see that I didn't have any worth. So, and I was back when I was just like when I was maybe a teenager. I've been listening to a number of teenagers wondering who they are, because that's why peer pressure is so strong among teenagers, because this is where the pain is. They don't know who they are, they want to belong, the connection, but they don't know how to understand this relationship with self. Especially if in a family setting, all they hear is the disappointments of parents. What's wrong with you? I've been working hard to send you to school. All you have to do is get good grades. What's happening? What's wrong with you? So the idea, okay, there's something wrong with me, that's relationship with self. Okay? So if you want to, and this is across, the line. Among the older generation, the question really is connection and isolation and abandonment. The younger ones, they're still that, but the more obvious pain is actually, who am I? A question of identity. What am I doing here? Okay. Well, and that is quite related to the third pain here is our relationship with the world. And this is about our own relationship with our significance. Do you ask yourself, do I matter? Do I have an impact in the place where I live in? If I deliver something, are people blessed? Can I effect change in the way I do things? Do I have a purpose in this world? Imagine if you take away all of this kind of questions, it will be a very miserable life. Viktor Frankl, this is where the existentialist it's going to come in the picture. Viktor Frankl, for example, he was able to survive the Holocaust because he never took away his sight from the purpose that he's seeing in his life. There were many Jewish people back then who actually suffered and died not only because of the horrendous treatment that they received from the Nazis, but because they lost their sense of hope and sense of purpose, sense of meaning. Their relationship with the world is, I no longer know why I live. Okay, then they gave up. Okay? So these three things, our relationship with others, relationship with self, and relationship with the world. We are actually created to understand this need, to experience the joy of having this place in the heart of others, this joy of understanding who we are, and we can embrace ourselves as created in God's image, and understanding our relationship with the world, our purpose. Why do we matter? Now, imagine growing up. If these three basic areas are wounded, I want you to go back to your own experience. Okay? Were you one of those kids, as far as relationship with others, who are longing to be loved and to be embraced and to experience wonderful attention from, the grown-ups, and yet nobody was there for you. And yet, sometimes when you are actually dying to have your parents' attention, as if you have to earn it by doing the chores, getting good grades, behaving quite well, that is a source of hurt as far as relationship with others is concerned. And it also eventually hurt your relationship with yourself, because the question would come as just like, why am I not being loved? Maybe I'm not lovable at all. Okay, that is in the area of connection. The area of worth and identity, okay, is if you keep on hearing being defined by others, by parents, by older siblings, by friends, you're dumb, you're idiot, you're stupid. So growing up, what's being hurt there is your idea of self. Now, it's possible that pain would remain today regardless of how old you are. I've seen a number of pastors who are training, regardless, the rabbi, priest, when they move to the next level, for example, being a seminary student or graduate of seminary, and then now they're entering a more serious responsibility. Someone who is going to be in this respected status of being, quote unquote, church leader or pastor. They're struggling with, they even cry, can I really be that person? And when we talk about why not, it goes all the way back because no one actually trusted me or see me that I can be who I am. The identity is actually very much broken. And you will see many pastors as if they don't have problems because they assume the role. But behind that, the pain is always there. I mean, it's easier to just put on the role and say, I'm going to preach today, I'm going to teach today, I'm going to visit people, I'm going to shake their hands, But going back, it's the question, the nagging question is always there. Am I worthy to be here? And sometimes they interpret that as humility. It's easy, maybe because I'm just humble, that's why I'm asking that question, I'm worthy. But actually there is a pain behind that. Okay, there's a pain behind that. Okay, this requires, every now and then I think it needs to be. Okay. And then finally, our relationship with our world, okay? I have suffered all of these pains, but this is the most serious ones that I have as far as my story is concerned. I am the only boy in our family. I have 5 sisters. My orientation in our family is if you're the boy, then you are the apparent heir, of Dad's throne. I'm in the middle, me and my sister. I've seen how my older sisters, I learned from their failures and successes because I want to be the best me that I could be so that eventually time will come when I could hear from my dad saying, well done, son, this is now your time, I'm going to pass the baton. Never happened. So my question of, do I matter? My question of, am I significant enough? My question of, do I have a purpose? I know I do, but how come my dad never actually gave me that blessing. So, what happened? I don't know how to say ouch with that pain. All I know is I have to muster that pain and eventually would believe that it will go away. So when I was given a chance to do certain things, whether being a pastor, a chaplain, or something else, I can see myself. I need to be competent. I need to deliver the best I could. Because I always, instead of experiencing a similar pain that I had with my dad, I don't want to experience that pain. So I have to convince my boss and everyone in my circle, in my working environment, that I can deliver. Because if they say, yeah, you can deliver, congratulations, then I don't have to feel that pain that I had growing up. Okay? So, in other words, each one of us, we do have our own pain. I don't know your story. But you are all coming from either a pain with relationship with others, with self, and your relationship with this world. Now, Paul, in 1 Corinthians 13, he said, now abideth faith, hope, and love. These three. Of course, the greatest of this is love. You know, these three things, this is the DNA, the way God created us. Love is the connection. It is just part of who they abide forever. Faith is our ability to see the worth in others and the worth in us. Having the faith that God sees our worth as well. That's faith. That's trust. And hope is our confidence that we matter, that we can deliver, that we have a purpose. These three, if you go back to 1 Corinthians 13, Paul, in his wonderful essay, he said, when I was a child, I act like a child. I don't see things clearly. Paul has his own woundedness. Paul is a strict Pharisee. There's a reason why he chose Phariseeism as his career in his life. He wants to make things perfect. He wants to live, by the rules. Why? His woundedness actually is he doesn't have this capacity to see his own worth from God's eyes unless he keeps every single letter of the law. Then he would feel worthy. But God has opened his eyes. His blindness turned into an opportunity for him to see that God is actually seeing him worthy regardless of his ability to keep the law. It is when he was saying, I am the chief sinner in this world, that is actually when Paul finally get it. How can he call himself the chief sinner when he is the best person who could keep the law as a Pharisee during his time? In fact, he hated Christians because they are going against the law that he knows back then. Yeah. So, when he was writing this faith, hope, and love, he was actually talking about what happens to our own relationship with love, with connection, faith, that love, connection, relationship with us, with ourselves, our ability to trust and see our worth and value, and hope, our freedom to understand that we matter, that we count in this world. Now, so here you are, okay? Here we are in this church, experiencing this pain. As adults, we learn how to muster this pain so that people won't feel it. It's a nice neighborhood. It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood where everybody's smiling. We come to church, we shake people's hand, we ask this question, how are you? Fine, thank you. Fine, thank you. And then all of a sudden, we hear a member, experience divorce. Then we hear one who committed suicide. Then we hear another member of our church who end up in a hospital, not knowing why. Doctors can find illness, but lying there at the bed, wondering what's happening. When we go back to church, everything is fine. When we go back to our own secret lives, we are suffering. This, from the perspective of 1 Corinthians 13, this is actually the core of our own pains as individuals. Am I loved? Am I worthy? Do I matter? Those three questions. In this America, place where, I was born and raised in the Philippines, after 20-something years, we moved here in the United States. I see the difference. I understand why older Filipino folks would like to go back to the Philippines to retire there. Because in here, yes, they do have kids, but they are all working. And they are just locked in this big house, not knowing how to survive such emptiness and isolation and loneliness. So they decided to retire in the Philippines, otherwise they will die of that disconnection. And we do have a number of people in this church who are experiencing with this loneliness and isolation. We don't know how to actually address that. Everybody's busy in this world. But how can we actually minister to them? I'm glad that this church have a strong ministry to visit people who are actually isolated and abandoned. Mark has been sharing with me some of the things that you're doing. But that's one pain. And then there's a pain of, usually we don't want to be with people who are actually pain in our behind. We don't hear their pain. We hear our own pain. You are a pain in my behind. So whose pain is being heard? Our pain. Not their pain. I visited someone in a hospital. Young person, 36 years old. Okay, breast cancer. Mets affected her liver. I didn't know that. I was just called to visit her. I was stepping inside and say, I don't want to see you today. Go out. Go away. Get out. Then I felt like, okay, this is embarrassing. This is rejection. Whose pain am I hearing? My own pain, my own embarrassment. I took it personally. I thought it was about me. I don't hear her pain. Her pain actually is, what happened? All of a sudden, everything is cut. I'm supposed to be enjoying life. And then all of this question, do I deserve this? Is this my worth as far as relationship with self? Relationship with others? How about my kids? There's a big disconnection. I'm going to stop here. What's going to happen there? I want to enjoy them more. And then relationship with this world. What's my purpose now? See, she was experiencing tremendous pain. But when she says, get out, I don't want you here, all of a sudden what I was hearing is my own pain. It's embarrassing. I'm rejected. I'm fired. What's wrong with me? Now, if we can only, in our hearts, understand that this world really is living in a very painful place. And do you know that in the time of, when people are together in Acts 2, okay, and they're together, so that's why the Holy Spirit, the term is one accord. One accord is when Everybody feels everybody. Okay? One accord. Regardless of the race, of the gender, and background. It's a very radical image. Today, the way we understand one accord is no longer how we feel one another, but one accord is, do we believe the same? Do we have the same stand with this particular issue? That's how we define one accord. Okay, now we're on the same page. Okay, let's form a group. Back then, it's not about, do we see things the same? Back then, the one accord is, are we connected? Are we connecting? Christ suffered for us. Do we feel that? Christ saved us on the cross. Do we feel that? Do I feel? That's why it's easy for them to actually sell their land and give their money to the church so that they can help those who are suffering. The connection is not about doctrines back then, Christ's life. The connection back then is bigger than that. Okay? If our goal here is to eventually at least go back to the New Testament church, I think the best goal that we can have here is, how can we finally, once again, feel each other and feel each other's pain to a point where we're willing to sacrifice the way Christ sacrificed for one another. The connection. Now, when we come to church, it's not just about do we believe the same things? Do we see same things here? Because if you are conservative and I'm liberal, there's no way we can be together, so I'm going to find a church that could take me. And then in our political world, if you're Republican and I'm Democrat, you can no longer be together. I'm going to find some place where I can be me. Okay, the belief, we are living in a world where polarization, the polarity is so strong, right? We no longer hear other people's pain. We always hear our own pain. The idea is this. You don't have to change who you are. You don't have to change your belief. You can be confident in what how you see the world. But the challenge is this. It's not to convince others to see the way you see things so that you can be in harmony. That's not the challenge. The challenge is, this is me, this is you. How far is our difference? How big is the gap? The challenge is, can we afford to fill this gap with love so we can also experience intimacy in Christ? The New Testament church is composed of people who are actually coming from different walks of life. You don't have to go far, just look at the disciples. There is Matthew, a tax collector who's very much hated by the fishermen, because the fishermen, they actually work hard to support their family, only to be taken a big portion of their income by these tax collectors. And then Jesus says, okay, fishermen, tax collector, follow me. You will be my disciples. They will kill each other. But that is the idea of the church that Jesus was thinking. It is not our similarity. It is actually presenting us the big gap that exists between us. And the challenge is, I want you to understand that this gap can also be an opportunity for each one of us to experience the true meaning of love. Because the truth is, whether you are conservative or liberal, if we try to see each other, we are actually a reflection of each other. Both selfish, both foolish, both passionate about things. And yet we are so much focused on hearing and listening only to our own pain. But if we start hearing and listening with each other's pain, we will realize that it is actually a same world, same boat, same struggle, same vulnerability. You know, that is our goal. That is our goal. To start seeing each other as Christ created human being, struggling like we are. Yes, we have differences, but so what? Every differences we will experience, we do experience, is always an opportunity for us to test the kind of love that we receive from Christ. Putting these two together, the disciples of Jesus Christ, is just like putting us together today. And it's not about because we see things in similar ways. Today's church actually is like that. I mean, it needs to be challenged radically by Christ's original purpose. Okay? You will see Camelback Church has its own unique characteristics and distinction. There's reason why members of Camelback Church are together, and there's reason why other churches are together. If we will try to put all these churches together, the tendency, human nature, the tendency is just to set apart. For peace sake, we call it peace, for peace sake, and continue living the way we do and struggle in this very challenging world. But that's not Christ's design. Christ's design is, let me put you together and experience the difficult experience of being together until you finally get it. That every single time we experience these differences is always an opportunity to test the kind of love that we have received from Christ. Let me pause here and see if there are some thoughts that has been triggered here, questions and insights. Yes, sir.
Well, I myself deal with a situation with an individual who I believe has done me wrong. And I've been struggling with this for a couple of months. My old nature is wanting to get revenge, get back. Well, how can I do something, and to make this right with myself? And then I have had opportunity to have other people, as you, bringing up the same thing about love, what Christ is all about, and how we're going to be happy in heaven if we don't have the love, where there's no place for us in heaven. And we must love those who dislike us or do us wrong or hate us in some way. Our responsibility is to forgive them and not judge them, because they're hurting. People don't react against other people unless they're hurting themselves. They lash out at one another. And so let's look for and pray for that person. Look for what may be troubling them and how we can make things better to make their life a little easier too.
The word forgiveness is another term.
It's tough.
The word forgiveness is actually the key that would make two different people survive this journey of being together.
My trouble is forgetting. It keeps coming back to my mind.
I forgive you, but I can't forget what you done to me.
Yeah, it's hard, and I want to forget it too. I ask the Holy Spirit to take this from me, because I'm out working, doing things, and it's coming into my mind again. Jesus, please take this from me.
Yeah.
Because Satan is always there trying to bring back that little hurt.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Notice you talked about how we think others think of us and how worthy we are to them. When Jesus Christ died for us, which makes us worthy. It's not other people think of us. I grew up the youngest of 7 brothers, and you
Wow.
get totally lost in there. So,
Yeah.
but I don't, with my worthiness, I care less what my brothers think. It's what Jesus thinks of me, and that He died for me. People focus too much on others, what they think of me, and that doesn't matter. So,
One of the questions I see, I know everybody in this room, work with all of them, and we're all caretakers. We all love Jesus, no question. We all love people, and I think one of the reasons I asked you to come here is some of the struggles I want with myself and with others is when you walk into a room and somebody's in such chronic pain they can't even say their name, and it might be on the edge of death. What comes up for me is my own death. What comes up for me, my own pain, and then my question to you is then how do I cross that barrier and deal with myself so I'm not transferring that to this person and thinking that that's me in the bed and back off and just be there for them because my brokenness is still there on a very deep level. How do I come to recognize that and overcome that?
Sure. You know, the challenge is not because you're experiencing your own pain when you see another person. The challenge is, do you have the stamina to be in the other person's pain? Today we live in a world where, you go to the hospital, they have this smiley, circle. Tell me the level of pain, please. Is it 1, 10? As if the reason that why you're there is just to manage the pain. But the pain is not just, it doesn't exist because it needs to be managed. The pain exists because it is a message and it has something to tell you, right? Now, if you see a person who is in pain, for you to be able to understand the story and the message of that pain, you have to go to where the person is and have the stamina to face that darkness until you eventually see things from the way they see things. But the problem is we are just like nurses or any other interventionist. What is the pain? Oh, don't worry, brother. Isaiah 41 says, fear thou not, for I'm with thee. We are trying to pull that person to sit where we are, because where we are maybe is less painful. And the goal is, maybe if there's no pain, then the world will be a happier place. No. When we see someone who is in pain, and it touches some of our pain, that's a good thing. As human beings, we can connect. The problem is when we start feeling our own pain, we don't know what to do with that. Okay, especially if we have this tendency of taking pills to numb this pain. Okay, it could be alcohol, it could be TV, it could be anything. And then here's a person who is suffering in their own darkness, in their own pain. And we see that. And we're reminded of our own pain. And our tendency is to numb this pain. That's how we miss the opportunity of providing care for others. So the question really is not what I'm going to do so that I don't have to deal with my pain and be with the person. Well, the answer to that is this. First, are you willing? Are you willing to be courageous enough to stay with the person and see the world from the way they see things? And if I'm going to give you a chance, there is a quote that says, being loved by someone, oh, that's fantastic. That's wonderful. But loving someone, especially who is unlovable and sometimes who's in pain, it takes courage. So what we need is courage. Okay? Yes, sir.
The gentleman touched briefly on forgiveness, and obviously the whole forgiving brings a lot of pain to a lot of people. This week I heard on Randy Carlson, Intentional Living, he cited an analogy that was made by Corrie ten Boom about forgiveness. And she compared the ringing of a church bell to forgiveness, where when a church bell is silent, it requires effort and to pull on the rope. And it requires us putting ourselves into that to pull on the rope and the church bell ringing. And then, likening the pain of trying to forgive somebody, the church, then it becomes really, really easy to continue to ring the bell just with maintaining the momentum that the bell is already ringing. In Christ, we have to give that forgiveness to him, and then we have to take our hand off the rope. Once we take our hands off the rope, Corey Ten Boom wrote, the bell doesn't stop ringing. That's what the gentleman is suggesting. I'm trying to forgive, but I can't forget this. The bell's still ringing in my head. Only through the grace of Christ can we keep our hands off that rope. And when we do, ultimately, in time, the forgiveness will take place and the bell will be silenced.
Thank you very much for mentioning the word grace. Because grace, whenever you use the word grace, it's very hard to live in grace and yet still focus on what is just and what is not just.
Yes, it is.
Because grace doesn't think about what's just and what's not just. You know, grace is the system's going to fail us because we live in this sinful world. The system's going to fail us. And God's remedy is not to correct the system. God's remedy is to offer grace. If we see from that perspective, if you are in a system that all of a sudden there is injustice, and you're trying to look for that justice, you will end up really getting more hurt and hurt and hurt because the system is going to keep on failing you. If you go back to Jesus hanging on the cross, what he's saying you actually is, this is our world, brother. It's not about restoring the justice. There's a time for that. The time right now, actually. Mercy and grace, they are not actually seeking for justice.
Right.
Mercy and grace actually is offering healing in a very profound, tremendous way that we could hardly understand. But if we come from that perspective, yes, the system will fail. That's why there's grace. In our relationship as husband and wife, with the many thousand times that I have failed my wife, what saved our relationship is not because now I finally straightened my life. No, it's not that.
It's grace.
It is the grace and forgiveness.
And that's not human.
And, we're just partakers, right?
Grace isn't human.
Yeah.
Another thing that was brought to my attention one time, a husband and a wife, she was having a hard time forgiving a high school classmate. And he said that he had prayed for a friend of his that he no longer got along with for a whole year who stole money from him. And he said he prayed for good things for him and that his life would be better. And in that process of praying for that other person who wronged him, he was able to forgive and let go. So not only did it help that other person, it helped his heart too.
Forgiveness is actually freeing yourself, not the others. That's right. That's right.
Well, let's talk about the person that's in the hospital in the bed and told you to get out.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
That pain is an eternal pain.
Mm-hmm.
And we as people do not step into that space. When someone says, get out, I don't want you here, don't come. We as people really actually is happy that you did tell me that, so I don't have to come.
Mhm.
So I'm going to run.
Mhm.
Not to stand in the space of that pain that someone is experiencing. Because if you stand in that place, then you will let go of who you are. And you will look at that person as your brother or your sister.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we get from one space to the next?
Sure. A very good question. Okay. So I don't want you here get out. Okay. Number one, without doing anything, already has given that person the gift of finally getting this kind of freedom to express their pain and anger and frustration and disappointment to you, because you are just symbolizing the rest of the world who don't understand her pain. So you're offering yourself, okay, sister, this is your opportunity to express your pain, to say your ouch. That's already a gift. The fact that you were standing there not knowing what to expect, and then all of a sudden, and remember, if she's in the hospital, she cannot say, get out to the nurses. She cannot say, get out to the therapist or to the doctor or even the person cleaning the floor. Then finally you showed up. That's a gift. Wow. For the first time, I found someone who can finally say, get out. So that's already a gift. Number two, if, and this is only if, okay? If your pain, because you are rejected, is not occupying the space, if that was not an issue to you, if your heart connected with her pain, if your heart all of a sudden spoke to her pain because her pain was speaking to you, and you say, oh, you must have a very difficult night. It looks like you are in pain. And then allowing her to fire you again, that's okay too. But allowing her at the same time to see if you are also the person of the many people in this world who would allow her just to be. Now you turn the table. She can only do two things. If you represent those people who'd like to fix her, to use the scripture or songs or, God is great, keep your hopes high, or cheer. If you are representing this the people who would actually try to fix her, she could continue to fire you. But if she felt at that moment that of all the people who's trying to fix her, you are the only person who's saying, I get you. Life sucks. It's dark in here. And I'm here to be with you. If she gets that you are that person, you will be surprised. Maybe the following words are still in the tone of anger and frustration. Yes, you're right. Life is difficult. Life is hard. Why me? What? Welcome. You're being hired then. Despite the fact that she says, get out, and yet here she is, continuing, expressing her pain without you being offended because you are providing a safe place for her. Does that make sense? So if we could only get a little bit patient, loving, focus on other people's pain and not our pain, there are many people who would finally experience this certain freedom of being who they are.
Trigger words are so important. Is that what you said to the person? Expressing, tell me about your pain. I understand.
By the way, words is one thing. The energy that's coming from within is another thing. Before you even say the words, when your eyes lock together, your body language saying, I feel your pain. I can relate to what you are experiencing. This is really a very difficult world. The body language could speak. And then the words, would just be words. It's powerful. Words, don't get me wrong, but we communicate from our heart, not only from our tongue. That's the kind of connection that heals, actually. Yes, sir.
I think a lot of times we misunderstand the concept of forgiveness.
Okay.
So as I approach an individual and ask for forgiveness, whether or not they can hear you or not, if I am asking for forgiveness, it doesn't matter whether they can hear me, because forgiveness is for me. Whether or not it's for the other individual has to do with the work of the Holy Spirit on them and whether or not they accept it. So as we go about asking for forgiveness, we're asking for God to heal us in our relationship with that individual. And what the other individual does is none of our business.
Very important. Again, it's a follow through to the person who said forgiveness is for is for yourself. Okay. Now, it is very important to understand that when we harbor hatred or pain in our hearts, the person who's actually imprisoned is the one who's harboring anger or pain. So the release is for the person who is actually in that cage, not the other person who caused the pain, especially if they have no awareness. If they do have awareness and they have their own pain and guilt and shame, then they are also have their own imprisonment. But that's their journey, and we have our own journey. So if we have this, disconnection and hurt with one another, I'm hurting and you're hurting. You have your own process and I have my own process. If I say I'm sorry and if I depend on your ability to forgive me, I will never be free from my own imprisonment. Yes, if I depend, as long as you live, if you say, as long as I live, I will never forgive you, and then I go back to my own cage and say, I'm doomed. Yeah. But the beauty in forgiveness is that the basis, the source of everything actually is the cross. What else can I do? I mean, I really hurt you so bad. I cannot repair it. I cannot fix it. The only thing I can do really is just ask for forgiveness.
He said it's back to the cross.
And the only thing that I can do this is because there is a bigger forgiveness that we all are experiencing. The problem with forgiveness is we get it here. It's hard to experience it here. I mean, we can have the whole day discussing about this theology of forgiveness. But once we start hurting each other, it no longer matters because the distance from this to this is really, really far. It's hard to understand. 13 inches. And yet, when we process things. Yeah. That's why it is a spirit work. It is a spirit work. And some people even would say, forgive them, but it's not something that you do, it's something that you discover. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you force it, because it is a behavior that you would like to demonstrate or to display, it's not authentic. And then we realize that it's only a facade. The truth is we haven't really forgiven the other. Because again, it's not something we do, it's something we discover. Forgiveness is a gift, How's everybody doing? Yes.
Jesus also said, if you don't forgive people, he cannot forgive you. So there is a healing in forgiveness.
How do you understand that? Jesus cannot forgive you if you can't forgive others. How do you understand that?
So, I mean, to me, this all comes down to personal reconciliation. I guess that's the word I use for it. So, I am unable to truly gracefully arrive in anybody's world and be with them, absorb that pain, understand that grace, truly forgive, right? Unless I've personally reconciled my own identity in God, right? So until I'm truly able to awaken every day and embrace that gift of grace and recognize that I'm alive today only because that God allowed me to do so, right? That is truly the gift. And that I'm okay and exactly where I need to be and perfect in that form at that time, regardless of past mistakes, current mistakes, whatever the case may be. I'm right here based on that grace, right? Based on that gift. And until I'm at peace with that, then I'm unable to forgive. I'm unable to arrive in that room, be told to get out, and just take a breath and go, wow, he must have had a rough night. Right? Like, because unless that's truly done, to me there's too much baggage. There's too much baggage, there's too much stuff to layer through. It's too easy for that mind to snap up and start off. Right? Be like, oh, you don't want me? Cool, see ya. Whatever, right?
Does that help? Oh, okay, you're making it. Okay. Because here's the thing. If there's one thing that God cannot really help you with, is if you don't forgive yourself or others. You know, when the scripture says, in a sense, what you're saying, God cannot forgive us if we can't forgive others, it's not because God is conditional in that manner. I mean, he was not saying you have to demonstrate first that you are forgiving before I can demonstrate my forgiving heart to you. I mean, God is not like that. To me, what God is saying is, son, just like the prodigal son, you know, I have loved you, I have forgiven. Even before you ask for forgiveness, I have forgiven you. But if you can't forgive yourself, I can't just magically tweak your heart to just be changed. That's not how I work. If you can't forgive yourself or others, just like the peace that you're talking about, God will not intervene in your psyche. The only way that God would speak to your psyche is to invite you to look at the cross. The power of the cross. It is powerful. God has confidence that this cross can change anyone's heart. And yet, if you decide to say, oh, no, that's not enough. I can't still forgive my friend. I can't still forgive myself. That's what's saying, I can't help you then. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's wrap things up. 2 minutes. Takeaway. Anyone? Takeaway. That's how we wrap things. Any takeaway? Yes, takeaway.
If our pain is so great, and I'm probably just repeating this over again, but if our pain is so great, we can't hear somebody else's pain. So if you tell somebody Jesus loves you, and they're all wrapped up in their pain, they can't even hear that. So they're not able to even understand.
Yeah, if you love me so much, why do I have this pain?
It's a good takeaway. Good point. Any other takeaway? What's your takeaway for today?
Take your eyes off yourself, put them on others.
Okay, good. Good. Okay,
Free relationships with yourself, with the world,
with others.
and others.
Good. Okay, thank you very much. Now abide it. Faith, hope, and love. These three, but the greatest is love. God bless us all.